My name is Reverend Dr. Wallace Bradley, and I'm the host of the Bradley Report. I'm also the president of United in Peace, Inc. United in Peace, Inc. is also the sponsor of this show. United in Peace, Inc. is not a registered voter, so they can't make no endorsements. But me, Reverend Dr. Wallace Bradley, is a registered voter, and I do endorse candidates. But you, my listening audience, have the right to your opinion and the right to vote for any candidate that you choose. This show is being produced by none other than Dr. Terry Marsh Bradley. Not only is she my wife, to God be the glory, she's also the chairman of United in Peace, Inc. We got an interesting show. A lot of things has happened over the weekend. As you may have heard, and you, my viewing audience, may also know, that Dr. Frazier is now Bishop Dr. Frazier. Hooray, hooray, hooray. And I bear witness that he deserved that title, that his peers came to the conclusion that it was the right time for him to elevate up. There's been a shooting in our community where a young brother, he got killed. Someone had took his truck. Well, from what I'm seeing in the news, the individual that committed that crime has got apprehended. And now the children of the individual who had got murdered is no longer on the streets. The mother of the children whose father had got murdered no longer fear the boogeyman. We're going to talk about what the governor is doing, what the president is doing, and what our mayor is doing. So without further ado, Amani, let's go to work.
You know how sometimes you wake up in the morning and the First Lady puts out a statement demanding you be fired from your job? We've all been there, right? I agree that hateful and violent rhetoric is something we should reject. I do, and I think a great place to start to dial that back would be to have a conversation with your husband about it, because...
Hi again, everybody. It's now 5 o'clock in New York. A defiant Jimmy Kimmel last night after both Donald and Melania Trump called for the comedian to be fired over a joke he made on his show days before the White House Correspondents' Dinner. A joke that was about nothing more than Donald Trump's age and the strength, perhaps, of his relationship. The Trumps, however, attempted to blame that joke told on Thursday by Jimmy Kimmel for the violence that erupted at the dinner Saturday, something which Kimmel flatly rejects. Watch.
It was a very light roast joke about the fact that he's almost 80 and she's younger than I am. It was not, by any stretch of the definition, a call to assassination, and they know that. I've been very vocal for many years speaking out against gun violence in particular.
It is, though, the second time that the comedian has been forced to defend himself and stand up against the efforts by Donald Trump to have him fired from his job. Because Donald Trump's worst fear seems to be someone who uses humor to show just how small-minded he can be. While this type of defiance is newsworthy because it is rare, it's also a powerful tool when deployed against a bully like Donald Trump, especially during this second term as president. It's something only a few individuals have been brave enough to deploy as a tactic, and that's why we cover them here. We saw it in the people of Minnesota, of Minneapolis, when they took to the streets to stand up against Donald Trump, even after 2 of their own citizens were killed by ICE. We've seen it from a handful of leaders. We can literally count them on one hand. People like Illinois Governor JB Pritzker. Here he is during Trump's attempt to send the National Guard into Chicago during Operation Midway Blitz.
Donald Trump wants to use the military to occupy a U.S. city, punish his dissidents, and score political points. If this were happening in any other country, we would have no trouble calling it what it is, a dangerous power grab. Mr. President, do not come to Chicago. You are neither wanted here nor needed here. Your remarks about this effort over the last several weeks have betrayed a continuing slip in your mental faculties and are not fit for the auspicious office that you occupy. Most alarming, you seem to lack any appropriate concern as our commander-in-chief for the members of the military that you would so callously deploy as pawns in your ever more alarming grabs for power.
We showed that live when it happened because these acts of defiance, as we said, they're rare, but more often than not, they work. And they serve as a counter to the country, and they're projected around the world to counter Donald Trump. It's where we begin the hour with Illinois Governor JB Pritzker. Today, importantly, was the final hearing by the Illinois Accountability Commission, which has been dedicated to uncovering and investigating the violence by Donald Trump's ICE agents during that Operation Midway Blitz. Do you want to sort of take us through what an after-action kind of report and investigation filled in that wasn't sort of highlighted by you in real time?
Imagine being able to build an app with your name on it, just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44.
Thank you, Nicole. And yeah, you just saw the video of the beginning. And of course, they attacked our city. They brought.
You know, the wonderful thing, in my opinion, is that the truth is coming out. The people are no longer afraid of Trump. 3 or 4 of his cabinet members he has gotten rid of lately, and they're saying that possibly Stephen Miller or the Secretary of Defense, Cliff, I think that's his name, Cliff, whatever it is. The one that says he's the Secretary of War. And the director of the FBI is on the list that people no longer want them to be a part of President Trump's cabinet. Especially and because of the war in Iran. You got J.D. Vance, the vice president, saying, in the story that I read today in The Atlantic, that he feels that the Secretary of Defense is not telling the president the truth of what's happening in the war. But as you know, politics is just as local as it is national. So without further ado, Amani, let's go to the next piece.
Killing of a UPS driver. Michael Hunter was shot near 80th and Hermitage last month. Hunter's family says that he was killed while trying to track down his stolen truck. Investigators say 37-year-old Xavier Wilson has been charged with first-degree murder. Police say he was taken into custody Friday by U.S. Marshals.
You know, like I spoke earlier, the young man that was the victim of the shooting, the individual that's the suspect in the shooting, the one that was arrested, and he had went to court, I believe it was yesterday, and they were friends. The victim and the suspect, they were friends. And it was over a truck or whatever it is. Everything is going to come out tomorrow for sure in the news if it's not out today. But the people in the community are glad that law enforcement was able to apprehend the suspect because he's entitled to a fair trial. And one thing for sure, and I'm speaking because my brother had got murdered by his friend. And one thing I do know, that vengeance belongs to God. So let's get to the next story, very important story.
Attendance rates have been dropping across some CPS schools. How do you plan on keeping students safe from ICE agents?
I just want to commend you all in this room for demonstrating true solidarity. Don't allow certain public sentiment to dictate to you what's important to you, because the federal government and its overreach and working outside of the confines of the Constitution, that's a threat to all of us. That's not just about our undocumented and our immigrant siblings. All of us will suffer under a federal regime that undermines our constitutional rights. I've used my executive authority, 3 executive orders in particular, making sure that people know their rights and that every single city department and sister agency works within those rights, which is guided by our welcoming city ordinance, which was passed 40 years ago by the first black mayor in the history of this city, Mayor Harold Washington. I signed an executive order creating parameters around where ICE can set up its operations. So we have ICE-free zones where the federal government cannot operate on city-owned property. We have created a pathway for accountability so that in the event one of these federal agents works outside of the parameters of the Constitution, that we can create a pathway for prosecution and accountability. And now you have other cities enacting those same executive orders. The courts have made it very clear when the Trump administration tried to deploy the National Guard to the city of Chicago, the courts ruled that that was unconstitutional. It's going to take organizing on the ground. Government responds when the people are united. When the people are united, they always prevail. As long as I'm mayor of the city of Chicago, I'm going to use every single power that I have to ensure that we're protecting the people of this city. Whether you are documented or not, you deserve to feel safe and confident and comfortable in the city that you call home, which of course is the greatest city in the world, the city of Chicago.
You know, you got individuals out there that's trying to turn the state and the city red. And they always talking about what the mayor ain't done. I want you to pay strict attention to this piece that's coming up and see what the mayor is doing as opposed to what this guy is trying to say he's not doing.
this place has been run. And we're going to get into a little bit here. We're also going to hear what the people in Chicago are saying and how they're outraged about how the budget is being run specifically in Chicago. So check this out from the local news there in Chicago. They say Chicago's 2026 budget takes effect, forcing Chicagoans to pay more for shopping bags, Uber rides, booze, online gaming, but the grocery tax is eliminated. Now, the reason that they're going to pay more is going to be interesting, and you're going to hear from the people of why they're upset. Check this out from the news there in Chicago.
After months of debate, Chicago finally has a new budget. Our Heather Sharon joins us now with what that means for Chicagoans and their wallets. Heather, the city's spending plan for 2026 had to close a nearly $1.2 billion shortfall, which we knew about. How did they do it?
Well, with a host of new taxes and new fees, but not a tax on big firms for each employee that they have in Chicago. That was the big sticking point. Mayor Brandon Johnson really pushed for it. A healthy majority of the city council said no way. Also not in this budget, a grocery tax, which is going to save the average Chicago family about $100 a year. But people have to be sure to bring those tote bags because the cost of paper and plastic bags to take that food home, that's going to cost you double what it did last year.
Oh my gosh.
Also, it's going to cost you more if you call an Uber or a Lyft from an expanded downtown area. And it's really not clear whether more cuts or fees are in the offing.
All right, so now that's a little bit of a background of what's happening with this budget. Let's actually go ahead and we're going to hear and listen to a video by Nate the lawyer, and I'll leave a link to the full video from Nate where he actually breaks down how this is affecting the people of Chicago and what led up to this and exactly why it's costing them so much. So let me get this for you guys, and you can hear it from Nate because he does such a great job explaining this.
Right, Marie, we're talking about a $1 billion deficit for 2026, and the city's budget director warned that is an optimistic outlook for the future.
Yes. I'm standing here tonight with buyer's remorse because I supported Mayor Brandon Johnson. I feel like a fool right now. I feel like a plum fool.
Now to NBC5 investigates, which for months has followed the money trail tied to Chicago's migrant mission. Total spending now tops more than $400 million.
Without significant shifts in how we balance our budget, the services that the people of Chicago have begun to rely upon, they would certainly be in jeopardy.
So the mayor of Chicago spent $600 million of taxpayer money on illegal migrants. Now that bill has come due and he wants to raise taxes so he can cover his behind. Let's talk about it.
That's a lot of money.
All right, so this is the 57th mayor of Chicago, Brandon Johnson. Now, I don't have to tell you, Chicago is a Democrat stronghold, and he goes all in on Democrat policies. Like, this guy doesn't just talk the talk, he walks the walk. Now, Brandon Johnson took office during the migrant crisis. Now, for those of you with short memories, when Biden was president, he opened up the borders, allowing millions of people to cross the borders illegally.
Tonight, nearly 10,000 migrants a day.
Mess.
That is what federal officials say they are encountering at the U.S. southern border on average. In December, that's among the...
And that's been one of the major sanctuary cities as well. There was even an instance where Chicago's governor, Greg Abbott, was actually sending illegal migrants to Chicago. And they're like, man, y'all got to get them up out of here. We don't want them here.
Highest numbers ever recorded.
This is hilarious.
And with multiple border entry points remaining closed as the surge at the southern border escalates, U.S. officials now warning that the situation is nearing a, quote, breaking point.
3 years ago, 689 Chinese migrants crossed the southern border. Last year, that number soared to over 37,000, part of an explosion of migrants coming here from all over the globe.
Now, even though all of that was happening, Brandon Johnson was all in for the migrants.
We know the strength of a city is determined by how we treat the most vulnerable. And so we choose to be a strong city. We must reject a zero-sum formulation between investing in those who have been here for decades and supporting those who have been sit here on a bus even this morning. We can do both, Chicago, and we can all thrive together.
Now, what he's referring to is that the governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, started shipping migrants to sanctuary cities, places that said they wanted more migrants, and Chicago was one of those places.
Local officials whose communities are being overwhelmed by hordes of illegal immigrants who are being dropped off by the Biden administration. Texas is providing charter buses to
there he
send
is.
these illegal immigrants who have been dropped off by the Biden administration to Washington, D.C.
Shout out to Greg Abbott.
We are sending them to the United States Capitol, where the Biden administration will be able to more immediately address the needs of the people that they are allowing to come across our border.
Now, the same message was coming from other liberal states, like New York, where the governor essentially begged migrants to come to New York.
We want people to come here, despite where they came from or despite the circumstances that drove them to this country and to this state. We say you are welcome here. You're welcome with open arms, and we'll work to keep you safe. We'll not only house you, but we'll protect you. And the richness of the culture and the diversity and the food and the restaurants that we know are going to be coming because of these efforts are beyond measure. It's an extraordinary part of our story, and it's woven into the story of New York, and it makes us more vibrant.
And we all know by what we've researched and covered here that a lot of this had to do with voting. They wanted them to move there because of the voting. A lot of re-elections were happening at the time, and that's why they were begging them to come. One of the main reasons. Another reason was funding. We even saw this also throughout New York, and don't get me started on Eric Adams.
It's an extraordinary part of our story, and it's woven into the story of New York, and it makes us more vibrant.
Now, this virtual signaling was great for politics, and since almost no migrants were coming to New York and Chicago, but were all staying at the southern border, then they could call the Republicans racist, and they could deny that stricter border policy was necessary. There were no consequences. But the governors in those border states came up with a solution. If cities like Chicago and New York wanted illegal immigrants, then let's send them there. This was a win-win. Those cities get the migrants, and they also get the problem that come with those migrants. But now here's the rub. When all those migrants started showing up to these liberal sanctuary cities, all hell broke loose, and they started declaring states of emergency. How are we going to take care of all these people?
This morning, the mayor of Washington, D.C. has requested the help of the National Guard to assist with the buses of migrants arriving to her city.
Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey has declared a state of emergency to address the state's growing migrant crisis. The governor says there are over 20,000 people being temporarily housed across the state.
Our top story, another bus of migrants arrived today in Los Angeles and were taken to St. Anthony's Croatian Church processing.
Back in New York, the mayor had a stark message this month.
I don't see an ending to this.
There he is,
this
Eric
issue
Adams.
will destroy New York City. Destroy New York City.
And increasingly, the migrant crisis is being felt far from the border, including cities like Chicago, where officials say resources are running thin.
Now, it's interesting that the liberals in these sanctuary cities turned this into a racism issue and said if you didn't want to take care of migrants, you were a racist. And Brandon Johnson went all in, spending up to $600 million in taxpayer money taking care of migrants.
The immigration crisis has strained city and state resources.
Which is
Chicago Mayor
insane.
Brandon Johnson defending spending taxpayer dollars on maintaining a welcoming city while being interrogated by the House Oversight Committee in Washington today.
You're the mayor of Chicago. Do you think that your residents or the residents of your state should be paying for that more than they should?
Now, what's so amazing about this? Hit it right there where the mayor's talking right here. You know, what's so amazing? They know that the whole crisis of the immigrants piece was put together to disrupt democratic cities and democratic states. That governor in Texas should have been charged with human trafficking. He put them on buses and put them on planes and shot them here to Chicago. Then they had the black MAGA people get up and say, well, the mayor's disrupting all this and he ain't doing nothing. But they won't say and tell the truth what you just witnessed. The whole problem of them coming to Chicago and with them living in the streets and everywhere else was a plan from Trump's administration and the Republican Party, along with the black MAGA, given the impression that there was a war between blacks and Hispanics that was created by the Republican Party to disrupt, like the disruption that you're seeing now with Trump trying to get away from the Epstein to the point that he created a war in Iran without talking to Congress, without talking to his allies in the Middle East, nor his allies with NATO. He talked to no one. He let Netanyahu push him to attack Iran. Now the United States is in a hell of a situation. Our status in the world has went down. The word of an American president has no weight. Gas has went up because of the things that this president has done. And those that supported him knew what he was doing and didn't care what he was doing. Show that for you to see it for yourself. Don't take my word for it. Google it. And don't just be a registered voter. You can be red or blue. But know that MAGA ain't so happy with their fearless leader, Trump, because he tricked them too, especially Black MAGA. Man, he tricked them. I mean, what can I say? You know what you said. But I want to say to God be the glory. Just gave the story. Vote November 3rd to keep Illinois blue, because it's definitely going to benefit you, especially those of you are ungrateful. To God be the glory. That's Gator story.